I could do anything I wanted and I felt guilty. Okay, this isn't normal. This isn't healthy. I don't want this for myself. I think a lot of my depression was related to my extremely negative automatic thoughts. What the depression was telling me, what I realized was, you need to slow down.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Highest Version Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Philivong, and on this podcast, we talk about falling in love with the process of getting better every day and becoming the highest version of ourselves. Today's guest is Jen Tan, a fellow UMass Amherst grad who also has been on her own mental health journey. From experiencing trauma and depression at an early age, she is now sharing her story through her own platform and her own YouTube channel. She's also buying into this a message that I also want to send to the world, which is becoming the highest version of ourselves by prioritizing our mental health. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Jen. How are you, Jen? Thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course.
It's been such a long time since we've seen each other, about 5 years, which is crazy.
Yep.
But I know that, I've seen you post about, what you really care about, which is mental health and creating self-love for yourself. And obviously we're going to get into why, why you started that journey, why you're putting out that message. But, I do want to ask, how is your mental health now?
It's good. I always strive to find a balance. I can't always say oh, I'm perfect at it and things like that, but it is good.
Good.
Yes.
I mean, it's always good to have your mental health on the up, and comparing, how it was, when you started your journey. I literally was on a walk this morning.
Yeah.
And I was looking at myself. I was thinking to myself, I was like, dude, look how far you have come, in such a long long period of time. Because I started my own mental health journey along the same time that you have, which was 2020. And I was like, wow, the things that used to make you super upset, don't anymore. You're able to not get rid of, but talk through these negative thoughts a whole lot faster than you were before.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's crazy and a crazy feeling, and I was just experiencing a lot more gratitude for who I am and how far I've come. So I don't know if you also had those realizations recently, or you've had that realization before.
Yeah, I mean, I think not before. I would always be oh, I don't like myself. And I think being in my relationship with my boyfriend, he's really helped me just start being proud of myself and all the things that I've accomplished. And so I am very proud of myself for overcoming overcoming the past couple of years, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But I just think I agree with you, bouncing back. I can bounce back a lot faster. I can identify when I'm starting to feel stress, anxiety, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I have the proper tools to help cope with that. And so I'm 100% proud of myself for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, super awesome. Super snaps for us. Snaps for us.
Oh yeah, the snaps. I love it.
Our tool belt is crazy now, from where, probably starting from a grappling hook to now, a plethora of other things,
right. Exactly.
So before we get into your journey and obviously my questions, I want to feature the Funko Pop of the episode, and that is Mulan. And the reason why I picked Mulan was because not only is Mulan a strong and independent woman, but she's also been faced with family struggles and cultural struggles that has tried keep her down and basically not love who she is. But obviously we know through the movie she becomes her own authentic self and shows how powerful she is, even as a woman. That was the whole story of Mulan. Just want to get your quick thoughts on how you feel about that, how you feel about the connection between you and Mulan.
Yeah, I mean, I like it a lot. I'm Chinese. She's Chinese.
There you go.
And then also, I feel the movie does accurately depict women in Chinese culture. Although the modern Chinese culture is a bit more different, compared to what it used to be.
Yeah.
But I think my family kind of did raise me in that way. I don't like using the word misogynist, but it is a bit misogynistic. And I'll go into that later too, about my family and all that stuff. But yeah, I do think she's a very strong person. I think I'm a very strong person.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. And so I like it a lot. I love it.
I'm glad to hear, because I really try my best to take Funko Pops that I have and connect it to my guests. Sometimes they're a far stretch, but you know.
Wait, is it because you have from that collection to choose from?
Yeah, this collection only. Yeah, I don't have like a whole like. So what Jen was referring to, she's looking at my wall of Funko Pops. So you guys don't know the studio. But yeah, I basically have like this, and like this is the only like. I'm not made of money, and I'm not a millionaire, so I can't buy any Funko Pop I want. Even though they are like $15, but damn, that's like $15, bro. Like,
wait, I do have my own though.
Do you?
Yeah, with my 2 cats.
Oh,
so
wait.
because my boyfriend and I went to LA, and I made myself like.
Oh, you popped yourself. You Funko Pop yourself. Oh, that's
and
so
my
cute.
Cats, yeah. Oh, I should have brought that.
Yeah, I actually have myself that's over there on the other desk. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to take a look.
My girlfriend, she did that for me as a gift, and I think it's super awesome.
Was that online or did she go in person?
No, it was online. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a Funko Pop store in Cali?
In LA, like where
LA.
Hollywood is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One day.
It's a very cute date idea for sure.
No, it's not a cute date. It's me being a nerd being like, my girlfriend's like, come on.
Okay, they have like the Marvel characters and they're like gigantic. You would love it.
I would nerd the fuck out.
Yeah. So next time you go to Cali, you should go there.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you would have so much fun.
Okay, I'll make that note. All right, Jen, let's get into it. Obviously, we have a lot to unpack here, and your journey is definitely inspiring, and I feel like I resonate with a lot because I feel like we have similar pathways, not on what triggered it, but I think similar pathways on how we started to prioritize mental health starting around the 2020 timeframe.
Yeah.
So my first question to you is, what jump started your mental health journey? When did you start realizing like, hey, like I really need to take care of myself?
Well, I'll start with 2019, which is when I came back from my gap year, my freshman year at UMass, and I realized I didn't like myself. And I was depressed that first year. And then 2020 happens and they send us all home. And I had this situationship, not even situationship. Yeah, that's the word. I was like,
nice.
Wait. Yeah, so I had a situationship with somebody and I was feeling really anxious, and I started learning more about like the attachment styles and things like that. And it got to a point where 2020 fall, he ghosted me, and it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me because it was kickstarted my journey of like self-love, learning about all these things. But I realized that a lot of the reasons why I was acting the way that I was because of my family and the family conditioning that was involved, and my family dynamics. And to sum it all up, it was very like I had very low self-worth, and I realized like that's why I'm putting up with this type of behavior. But it's like a lot easier to just say like don't put up with this.
Yeah.
But then there's always like emotional parts of you that are just like I want to go back, or like I want to change things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it took a while to kind of just like let go.
Yeah, it's like that or pattern behavior where like whatever you're familiar with, you're gonna go back to. It's like when girls or guys go back into toxic relationships because that's what they're used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was one thing a person said to me that was like, hey, like there's like, well, when you come out of a toxic relationship, like you kind of want that kind of same toxic interesting thing.
Yeah.
But it's like when you start dating someone that's like mentally healthy for you, they're like, oh, like you're kind of like boring, which is weird, right? And I was like, why would you want some kind of toxicity?
Exactly. Like why do you want to be hurt? Right?
Exactly, right? And I'm like, bro, I don't need like this doesn't need. And they're like, you just haven't been in a toxic relationship, so you don't know what that's like. And
Which
I was like,
is a good thing.
Yeah. I was like, well, yeah. I was like, I'm not a very toxic person. At least I hope not. If my ex-girlfriend's listening to this.
Well, now I don't want to know who this is.
No,
you can't expose them.
No, I definitely have. I when I look back at my relationship, I've definitely felt like I'm not very toxic. I'm like, the nice, nice boy next door across the street. But you've mentioned that you've had a gap year. I mean, how did your parents feel about you taking gap year? Because I feel like there was maybe an argument or fight that you had to like in order for you to do it.
The thing about my dad is that he never argues or directly fights with you. So my dad's suspected to be a narcissist, which most personality disorders don't get diagnosed because of many different reasons. And so I just personally think he's a narcissist because he fits all the like textbook
textbook
qualities, definitions of what it means to be a narcissist. But he said something along the lines of, and I still remember it to this day. He was like, I'm not going to support you and I'm not going to support you financially, but you can do whatever you want. So it kind of like hurts when you're 18 and you're like, like,
it's like a knife in the heart. And then,
it's like a bit of like the guilt also kicked in too. Because I was like, well, I can do whatever I want, but then he's also saying like he's not going to support me. So like a child who would want their parents' approval would probably not go for it. But I was like, screw you.
No, seriously.
And my mom's like super. She just does whatever he says. But she's also like, I know she has a brain of her own. And so she wasn't against it, but she wasn't for it either. And so you just have a parent, one who's like manipulating. And then the other one's just like, yeah, sure, do whatever you want. But I'm not going to support you if you need anything. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's super hard to like deal with at such a young age, Especially when like you're just, I feel like when you grow up, maybe I don't know if this is in all cultures, but especially in Asian culture, like you want your parents' approval for what you do, right? But I'm glad you took that step and was like, still take. And it was like you said, it's like one of the best experiences and helped you, widen your horizons on specific things in life. So that's awesome. That's super cool.
Thank you.
So now you come back to school.
Oh wow! Yeah, we went a whole tangent.
No. The story is painting perfectly right now.
Okay, awesome.
But you come back to school, but you still have this self-hatred for yourself. Yeah, and it's interesting because you were out there having fun and experiencing, these great experiences in China, but then when you come back, it's like. In a way, it's like all that is like stripped away from you, and now you're going back into an environment where, again, like you said, you didn't feel like you were being supported. Yeah,
like back to reality. Yeah. And then there was also a point during that year where I could do anything I wanted, and I felt guilty because I was like, I'm having fun. Yeah. And now that I think about it, I'm like, wow, I felt guilty about having fun. Like
crazy, right?
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was like all that years of conditioning where I was like, I feel like someone should be telling me what to do right now. But my dad wasn't there. Thank goodness. Yeah. So yeah, I came back and then, I depressed for most of freshman year. And then they sent us home and I was stuck with my entire family in the house. Thankfully, we all had our own bedrooms, but still, when you have 5 people in the same house and everybody's like in each other's space, a lot of things happened. It started out with just me kind of reflecting on things and then slowly realizing like, like this makes me feel sad or this makes me hurt or like things like that. And I think that's like baby steps, right? Like the first step was literally just like understand your emotions. Yeah. Like even identify like how you're even feeling in a given moment. And it took a lot of time. And I'm still sometimes like, I need to step away and process this. Whereas like back then, it took me like days to understand like one situation and why I was feeling that way. Yeah. And then I would journal about it if something happened with my parents. And eventually though, something shifted in our family where I started realizing like, okay, this isn't normal. This isn't healthy. I don't want this for myself. And I started talking to my siblings. So my siblings and I got really close. I basically raised my sister, just like in terms of like emotionally. Like the only thing my parents really did was put money and like food on. They provided money and food on the table. But so my sister and I were talking, and I told her. I remember there was this one night. It was I think like going into 2021, probably the end of 2020. I told her about how like these things aren't normal, what we experience. My sister was in denial for a shorter amount of time than my brother, and I think he still has like his own journey to go through about like in terms of like our relationship with our parents, because they didn't treat us all the same.
Okay. Like how? Like what was the different
Well,
treatments?
so there's a favorite child.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say my brother is my mom's favorite. My sister's was my dad's favorite. Was past tense because a lot has changed the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And then I'm kind of like the scapegoat, which is textbook for like a narcissist family, or a family with a narcissist in it. And so for me, I was obviously the first one to realize like, oh, this is messed up because I got pretty much no benefits from being in that household.
Yeah.
And then soon after, it was kind of my sister realizing a lot of things. And then so 2021, he basically starts this little argument that doesn't end up being little because he eventually just kicks me out, which is something that he's been doing since I was a child. Like he'll just be like, well, if you don't listen, then you can just leave my house. And then there are days where I would actually leave. And you know, I would leave, go to my friend's house, wait it out for a couple days, come back and act like nothing happened.
Yeah.
But 2021, it was July. I decided that this was already at the point where I was healing enough to know that none of this is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I don't deserve to be treated like that. And then got kicked out in July of 2021.
Okay.
And prior to that, I already wanted to move out, but I didn't have the resources to. Yeah, and it was still kind of, you know, I was still on my journey of figuring out like, oh, are my parents like normal? Like, you know, just like deciphering everything. So I got kicked out in 2021. I was in, I think, Suki's house for a little bit, and then my friend Lilicoy's house for a little bit until school started. And it's a whole thing where my dad bought me a car in beginning of 2021, and I got in a car accident. Oh, but he took the car when he kicked me out. Because it was under his name and everything, so I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
But I could see like it's manipulation because, you know, he's like, well, if you don't listen to me, then give me the keys.
Yeah.
And then I got in a car accident which is the universe telling me to cut all ties with him because the car got totaled in October of 2021, and then he gave it back to me.
Oh, he gave it back to you.
Because I was helping him with my sister. She was a freshman going into her freshman year. And the thing about my parents is that they don't act like parents. So I was driving her to like volleyball tryouts and just signing her up for school and stuff. So there's a part of him that knows like I'm very competent and he needs me to do stuff. But, you know, him being the narcissist that he is, he would never admit that. Yeah, so then basically I got the car back and I was living at an apartment off campus with Suki. And this is like the biggest betrayal of my life. And well, there's a lot. But I think this is the one where I was like, I'm never going back. So basically I was concussed trying to finish school, and my sister calls me in November, so like probably like a month later or something, and she's basically crying on the phone and depressed, and saying that she wants to end her life, and I'm depressed. So it's like two depressed people.
Right.
Yeah, and then I pick her up, and then she spends like a week at our apartment, and I talked to her counselor, her school counselor and stuff, and I let them know like this is what's going on. Thankfully, I know how the school works because I went to the same school.
Yeah.
But my parents are in the background, just like, you know, starting stuff. Like they were like trying to lie to her guidance counselor and all that stuff, saying that I'm the reason that she's depressed and I'm the bad influence. And, you know, they have to have meetings with the parents and the guardians. So I wasn't really in those meetings. And then so fast forward, I basically bought my car, and the car that I'm driving now, which I'm paying for because I was expecting this check. They were like, the insurance company was like, we're going to give you the check for a new car. but the car was under my dad's name. So they put the check in my dad's name.
Oh my God.
And I found this out recently. He purposely told them to mail that check to my uncle's house. So, yeah. And so I never saw the check. He kept acting like
it never came in.
Yeah. He was like, you should get the money. And then when I suggested that I was going to hire a lawyer, he was like, I'm not going to pay for lawyer fees for you. You can figure that out on your own. And then like a couple weeks later, after I bought my car, I realized, oh, he already took the check. And my lawyer told me all this because they sent me like a copy of the check and stuff.
Okay.
And I texted Suki and I was like, hey, I got kicked out again. LOL. Even though it's not funny.
Yeah.
And she was like, again? And so I, was prepared to move out and never go back again. Like this was like the time where I was like, I'm never going back. Like, I don't care how hard life is going to be. At this time, I still had my final semester at UMass, but I was like, I'm never going back. Like I will figure it out. And I actually made a video promising myself never to go back. So yeah, I might post that one day, but it's still there. But the thing is, so while I was grabbing my stuff that day, they come downstairs and my sister's like, I want to leave too. Like I'm going to go with her. Which, obviously at the time it wasn't feasible.
Yeah.
And my parents were like grabbing her. I think my mom or my dad or whatever. And then I was like, this is so like, it's getting out of hand.
Yeah.
And my mom was like pointing at me and she's like, I'm going to sue you and call the cops on you if you take your sister. Yeah, none of this ever makes sense, but that's because they're not like really.
It's more of like threats than versus like
there's
nothing that can actually come out.
exactly.
Okay, yeah.
And me knowing like what Belmont police would do, I was like, okay, I will call the cops, because at this point I was also like, this situation is very unsafe.
Yeah.
So we might as well just call the cops to make sure that like Lolly doesn't get grabbed and like all this stuff. And so the cops came like 2 minutes later, and I just told them like, I don't feel safe for my sister because my parents are getting handsy with her, which is true. And so they separated us, and basically they couldn't do anything legally because my sister was still underage. But I'm over 18. So they were like, your parents said that, they don't want you in the house. And I was like, yeah, I already know that. They already kicked me out. But basically it was more to get the cops was also just making a statement. Like, you can't just threaten things. Like I will call the cops, which I did. And fast forward to April, I was basically telling my sister, like, just hang in there. I'll get you out when I graduate. But I needed one more semester. But so yeah, I moved out that day, went to Suki's house, camped out there until the semester started, and I was in Sylvan my last semester. And my sister, I get the call again from my sister, and she's like, I'm gonna I want to end my life again. And this time it's more hysterical, and I knew how serious it is because like she doesn't just call me and threaten that every other week. I was like, okay, well, that's because nothing was resolved from last November. And she wouldn't eat, so I picked her up again. She wouldn't eat, and like it was bad, basically, to the point where I took her to the hospital in Boston. So I drove her back to Boston that night, and we checked her into the ER, and and then I ended up like, basically she stayed at the hospital, and I was driving back and forth from UMass to Boston, and I let my professors know, which was one of like the best things that I've ever done. Like just communicate. But that's something I didn't do in high school. Like I didn't tell any of my teachers like what was going on at home.
Because you were afraid that that it would your parents obviously be questioned, and then and it's your word against theirs, and
exactly. So there was a lot, but my professors were really supportive, and they got me through the semester, and I graduated. I didn't even go to graduation, and so I moved back right away, and I found a place that was owned by my friend's dad in Belmont, because the only reason why we stayed in Belmont was because we wanted her in the same school, because that school is like really good, and her teachers and her counselors know what's going on. So I was like, I want her to stay in Belmont. Yeah, and thank God we did. Like, it was the best decision.
Yeah. Because she also could keep like her, her friends that she had, and like she didn't have to start all over.
Like
literally start all over.
Yeah, like her support system would have been like just so much better.
Yeah.
And this is still the shortened version because there was a lot of like mini details in between. But basically, we moved in after I graduated in the summer, and I started my job at Toast.
Okay.
And I always thought like, I was like, oh, it's going to be easy because my sister and I have lived together and we've been like best friends, ever since we were young. But it turns out like I have a different role now because I'm also her mom, and it was tough in that sense. And so I went in and out of depression for like the past like 2 years after that. So I think I didn't feel like fully stable until 2024.
Yeah.
Like stable mentally. Because like financially and physically and everything, like I to this day, I'm still like struggling with a lot of it and still recovering.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like a lot on my plate. Like I've been a mother basically for the past 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, having like that kind of role, especially for your sister, it turns from sister to mother. So when there's situations where, I mean, I don't know what it's like. I'm just, all these things I'm saying is from assumption.
Right.
Is that, hey, like now it's like, hey, like not like you're questioning why she's going, out so late or maybe so many times, but like I could see it turning into that. It's like, hey, like you have to establish some things before you do that. And like for your sister, it's like, why are you quote unquote nagging me about this stuff? It's like we're sisters, like how but it's like different now, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is she knows herself that she sees me more as a mom than a sister.
Gotcha.
But right now, because she's graduating, like literally in a couple weeks, we're shifting back to the sister role. Yeah. And so we're like, okay, we can't do this because this isn't healthy. Although like the past 3 years, it's been great.
Yeah.
And it works for us, and we needed that. And she needed that, but also she's a great kid. Like I never worry about like, is she doing drugs? I just worry about if she's eating and if she's like mentally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she has
good.
her own journey for the past 3 years too.
Yeah.
But the roles of like mother versus like a sister is very different. And I think like life is getting a little bit easier because I'm going back to the sister role and not the mother role.
Yeah, but even financially too, like you're basically supporting both you and your sister. Like that brings in a lot of stress on that too. Like one of my past guests, he talked about how he and his family lost his mom and that the father wasn't in the picture. So she had to take a role of raising him and her other brother and her other sister.
Oh my goodness.
So she had to like basically drop whatever plan that she had initially.
Yeah.
And then basically be like, how am I going to take care of all these, of all my siblings? So hearing that story, I'm like, that's like,
and she had more siblings too.
Yeah. And then she really had to financially help, and obviously like, all the sisters help with like, maybe getting a job or something like that. But no, it's a totally different role when you have to take care of someone else besides yourself. Yeah.
This is why I like rethink having kids, but I really want kids.
No, trust me. Right now we're like, kids are obviously are expensive nowadays, but obviously there is a huge reward in it, and like how you're passing off. Your thinking and stopping generational trauma and all that stuff.
Not passing on generational trauma is super important.
Yes. Obviously, you've talked about your story and how much that has affected you. And like obviously it's very heavy for a lot of people, a lot of viewers, but I want to unpack on just your processes of how you were able to overcome so many things in such that amount of time, right?
Obviously the first one is therapy, and therapy will not work. So this is the thing. I think first of all, people should be aware that there are certain therapists that are just not good therapists. And that's really hard to figure out, especially when you have your own like trauma and stuff. And so that's one thing, like therapists aren't God, and they're not gonna like they're not always going to do the right thing. So there's that. Not to say that my therapist has been amazing, but so there's that. And then because when people say just go to therapy, it's not like this is not going to be like it's not going to solve it.
Yeah, there's a process.
Yeah, exactly. But therapy has been a safe space for me to feel. You can't just go to therapy and talk about how your week's been and then vent and be like, okay, I feel a little better now, and then do it all again the next week. Therapy only works and will only help you if you choose to be vulnerable and really like get into the nitty-gritty stuff, like the really like hard stuff, the stuff that's scary most of the time. Or else you're just kind of like wasting your time. Not wasting your time, because I think, like therapists will always like try to point you in a different direction if something's not working.
Yeah.
But I find that being with it, it's the most effective when I go to my therapist, and most of the time it will end up in like crying, but it doesn't. You don't have to like go into therapy and like be
always
like, oh,
cry.
my goal is to cry.
Yeah.
Because there's gonna be weeks where you're just like angry or something else. But I find that the most healing parts of going to therapy is being seen, and also having a safe space to really like, I see it as like this energy of like that's been sitting in my stomach for a very long time, and it's just like coming up. And to feel through it is and to be seen while you're feeling through it is the most healing part. So that's one part of like how I've healed in therapy and how to do it, because don't just go to therapy and talk. Like,
that's what more of like your friends for, if you're just like venting. But with therapists, like my therapist luckily was like, hey, like what are your goals? What do you want? What are your treatment goals?
Right. Yeah.
And she'll base every session based off of that. Obviously she'll open up like, how was your week? Like how are you since the last time?
Right.
And you could bring up these instances about them, but also be intentional with it's always about being intentional with your time.
Right.
Like if you feel like you're honestly, like I feel like I believe this too, like everyone should go to therapy to really understand themselves better, right?
Yeah.
So if you're something that came into my head when we're talking, it's like, oh, if you're not confident in yourself, why not go to therapy and try to figure out why? You know what I mean? If you really don't have answers, is it more of like, hey, something happened in your past, or is it generally because like, you're just not doing action items right now? You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
But for things that are more severe mental health is like, oh, like, depression, trauma, anxiety.
Yeah.
Those, like, if you want to get over them or have a better relationship with them, that should be your treatment goal. And every session should lead up to like, hey, like, how am I going to be able to do what I want to do? And I always came to my therapist with like, I ended every session of like, hey, like, what homework can I do? Taking a very holistic approach to be like, hey, like, I'm constantly doing something every single time. Yeah. So that way I'm not like just falling into, like you said, like just ranting and then being like, okay, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And two things came to mind. First of all, therapy is a privilege. So I think we should be very intentional about each session. And although you might not have to ask for homework every time, but it is like, not everybody gets to pay somebody to sit with them and, have a professional unpack something like that with them. And then the second thing is I give myself homework too. Like, and my therapist will also like recommend books and things like that, which is where I got the automatic thoughts exercise. Because she doesn't have all the time to like explain things to me, but I will like actively go and read books, podcasts, like all those things.
Yeah, there was in that time I was super intentional about like listening to podcasts and reading books. Now I'm like okay, like I'm better at a mental health standpoint, so I don't do it as much. Yeah, and like in my head I'm like, oh, I feel bad that I'm not, but then again it's like I'm just at a different point in my life. Yeah, like most of my podcasts are just listening to like like JK News and like Tim Chantarantsu and David So, like it's more entertainment based versus like, hey, before I was listening to Jay Shetty like every single day.
I see.
To like figure out like how to get better with like my mental health, but because there were some episodes that like did resonate with me and other episodes that didn't, that were helping me at that time. But yeah, that's always like a different part of your life where like you are super intentional about it.
Exactly.
But to go back to what we were saying with therapy, it's just like, hey, like you said, it is like, I think that's a really good way to look at it, is like, if you look at it as a privilege, using every session intentionally, and not every session will, you know,
yes, be like, oh my gosh, this is epiphany,
like my
or
mind's
whatever.
blown.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes it usually like builds up to that point.
Yes, exactly. I agree.
You know, for maybe someone that has struggled with finding a good therapist, you know, were you lucky on like your first therapist was like the like you stuck with, or what, did it have to take multiple like?
So I was very lucky in the sense that I didn't have to look too hard. I will say my first therapist crossed a bit of boundaries in terms of personal beliefs, and like I think like with a lot of therapists, like I don't really want to know like what your personal opinions are, because then that kind of like affects how I show up in therapy. And it started making me very uncomfortable, which is why I stopped seeing her. And so I think that should be normalized too. And then, you know, in terms of like finding my therapist, insurance is, you know, it's annoying and it's a whole process. But I will say, like, I just like sat down one day and mass sent emails to like every therapist that was in like the system. And that's how I found my current therapist. I had a thought, and it's like just like
it's there.
It like left though. It'll come back. I know it will.
It'll come back.
Yeah, but we'll just let it like do its thing, and then it'll come back.
So therapy was something that really helped you, and like it was like taking someone who has very objective, that doesn't know you, very objective perspective to help you through your process. Okay, so that's one part of your healing process.
So one thing, very I think really important, but also not most of my life. I think most days you're without your therapist. And wow, now that I think about it, I'm like, oh, I've never been asked this question, and I don't know how to sum it all up, because I did a lot, and then now I'm like, whoa, did I did a lot? Like, did I do a lot? Like, was it? Well, so I look at things and myself and others through, in social work, what we call like a biopsychosocial lens. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Okay. So bio is the biologies, psycho is psychology, and social is what's going on in your life and what environment are you in. And so with that, I process things through the three. So sometimes when something comes up, which all the time, right? Things always come up. I think about which one it is. So, you know, I care for my body because of the biology behind like why we are depressed and why anxiety happens and things like that. And so I love neuroscience. And then psychology is more of like, okay, well, what am I feeling? And like, what are these thoughts and all these things coming up? And social is just like, okay, am I around certain people that are maybe like not giving me the proper support or like creating more stress? And so when it comes down to like, I guess like I've built a formula for myself over the years, which is when something comes up, I no longer judge myself for it. And this is only like a recent development, you know, like it's taken this many years to stop judging myself and to really ask like, what's going on? Like what is my body usually trying to tell me? And so let's just like take my depression for example. Depression is, I think like a lot of the times, well, this is my personal experience with depression. When I get to a point where I no longer want to be in this world and I am feeling like these low moods, you know, all the signs of depression. It's because something's not working, or I'm trying to do too much. And it took me a very long time to really figure out like, okay, this is what depression is for. And it's actually not a bad thing, because I always saw it as like the enemy. Like what it's making me depressed. Like depression is just like trying to ruin my life because I'm over here trying to survive and like get my job, like finish my job, get paid. But what it was telling me was to stop. which is why I feel like I had so much trouble like getting out of bed and things like that.
I guess like what are two more things? Because obviously there you have a
Mm-hmm.
lot, but like what are two more things that were more that have helped you heal that were the most impactful?
Okay, I don't want to be basic, but I want to say shout out to my boyfriend. He's helped me heal a lot, and in ways in which, first of all, I tried to heal by myself, and part of trauma is also like feeling very alone for long periods of times when you're going through things that are scary. And so having my boyfriend, and in the beginning I didn't want to be like a burden, so I didn't want to like tell him about things, but he's very good with like, we're very good with boundaries. So if like we're either of us are like having a bad day and we're like, I'm sorry, like I can't hold space for you, we say that, because or else resentment's gonna build up. But I've had many days where for me healing was really just having someone there, and that was him. Or I've also, my sister has been there for me too when I've been going through things. And just for some context, like when I used to be avoidant attachment, and the reason was because I knew that whatever was the source of my stress wasn't gonna, like, okay, my parents, they weren't gonna comfort me, so I do it all alone. Like I like to like sit in the bathroom by myself as a kid, because it was the only door with a lock in my house. And I was also thrown in the basement as a child, which was very normalized, surprisingly. Like growing up, like my friends would be like, oh, Asian parents, but I'm like, no, that's not good. And so I'm very used to being alone. And one of the most healing things was really just like reaching out to someone who's safe and having them sit there and be there with me. And that like healed a lot of moments. And it was like, and it takes time too, because like I can't just have someone be there with me once and then the next time I do it alone. It's like a consistent, like I will always learn to reach out when I'm going through something, because I don't have to do it alone. And thankfully I have like good friends. I have a great boyfriend, like outside of my family, but like, having people who just like will hold space for me. Like, especially when I was, the whole thing with my sister was going on, I reached out to my friends and told them the situation, because the healing thing was just like not doing it alone. So that's another thing. So
having community.
My relationships, all of them, not just like my boyfriend. But he's played a huge part in a lot of other things. I want the third one to be like, ooh, this is the one, right? But then I'm like,
that's a lot of pressure to put yourself. Don't pressure yourself.
And the third thing is, I think I want to. So one of them is like doing things that are scary, that scare me, like working in sales and moving to Cali and then moving back here to Cali. And then what part of that is always being okay with like potentially getting hurt. Which I don't know if that's like, because I think I've lived in a state of fear because I've been hurt so much. And one of the most healing things for me, which is always like through relationships, but also just like situations, like certain situations where I'll put myself in like something that's very new. It builds a level of confidence. It's not just confidence though, but it's also healing, because I'm with myself. And like it's different now, because before, I was talking to you about the self-abandonment, and it would just be like I would disassociate and just be like, nope, I don't feel that way, like suppress all my emotions. But now when I do things that are scary, I kind of like hold my own hand in a way. And that helps me heal too, because after I like exit out of this scary situation, I'm still like, oh wait, I'm okay. And I was like with myself during that whole scary part.
Yeah.
And part of that is also like getting hurt and stuff, and opening yourself up to different people and things like that, and realizing like, oh, not everyone's gonna like you.
Yeah.
But it's healing in that way, because I'm like, the most important part is like not self-abandoning and thinking like I'm the problem, or and obviously I will be humble and like be like, okay, like maybe I did do something wrong in that situation, but for the most part, that was really healing, like doing things that are scary, because if not, then I would just stay in my own little like comfort zone, which wouldn't heal me at all, because I'm just like in my own little bubble,
and practicing old habits and behaviors that are not helping you in the version of yourself that you want to be.
Yes, exactly. And
yeah.
that's the highest version,
There you go.
You can't be the highest version of yourself if you don't do things that are like scary, but also like make sure that you're also there for yourself when you do it.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Give yourself credit for all the work that that you're doing to help yourself to help yourself get out of the situation that you're in, whether that's improving your mental health or whatever it is.
Have you heard of automatic statements or automatic thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, so I think a lot of my depression was related to my extremely negative automatic thoughts, which is always judgmental in some way or another, which creates my self-hatred. But also I realize, so that's one part of why I felt like, why I felt like I had depression, which was I had these automatic thoughts and they wouldn't stop. And a lot of it was actually like the voice of my parents. And so over the years, I've done this exercise that has helped me first identify the automatic thoughts, and then also like kind of just like reframe it in my head.
Yeah.
And the second thing was I was doing too much, which meant, I was trying to do work and trying to go to school and also work out and take care of my sister and take care of the house. I also have 2 cats, so taking care of them and have a social life. So what the depression was telling me, what I realized was, you need to slow down. And I didn't listen to it for the longest time, which is why I got to the point where it did. And now that whenever I feel like I get into these, like, I honestly haven't felt depressed in like, I think a year and a half. Yeah, like felt, but be depressed and felt. There's all these terms.
Difference. Yeah, there's difference. Yes.
But I haven't felt depressed in over a year and a half because of, I'm working on my automatic thoughts, and then just like recognizing I can't do everything and be everything for everyone at the same time.
Yeah.
And that has just made me like a lot happier as a person.
Yeah, like these automatic thoughts that we have it's crazy because I think it's because they are automatic, because it comes from different experiences. And I think you brought up in one of your videos, like the body keeps a score. So like those things that create those automatic thoughts, and obviously it's from different experience, whether that's our parents or from social life, dating life. Like I know like my own automatic thoughts that come up about, hey, like you're a monster, you're a bad person. Like those things that are just so extremely negative are automatic because of certain experiences that have happened in my past lifetime. Those ones are usually associated with like dating life and all that stuff.
I see. Okay.
But like yourself, I think you've mentioned about how cognitive behavioral therapy has really helped you. And I feel like you giving a definition of CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, will probably be better coming out of your mouth than my mouth, because if I had to explain it, it's more of just like we all have these, like Jen said, these automatic thoughts, right? But these automatic thoughts are driven by distortions, whether that's about not driven by distortions, but like we can categorize them through distortions. So when I think about one of them is like mind read, catastrophizing. Those are some of them. And for me, like I'm a huge catastrophizer. And like I recently learned that my dad thinks things in a really worst case scenarios. And because he thinks of worst case scenarios, that was passed on to me. I think the same thing. I'm like, oh, this bad thing could happen. This bad thing could happen. But sometimes we have to look at life like, well, what good thing could happen? Like what actually could go well, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I I'm going to use mind reading as maybe an example here with something I learned through my cognitive behavioral therapy was that, so if we take mind reading as a distortion, if I could best describe it, basically you are assuming things from that other person, which creates these extremely negative assumptions and negative thoughts that you have about yourself. So I don't know if your therapist took you through this too, but I use a automatic thought record. So well, first is I write down the if you guys want to try this yourself with the thought, me and Jen can probably take you through it.
It works.
It works tremendously. This is how I've been able to get over like my low self-worth and depression. Anyways, step one, if I can use this example, step one is for me is the automatic thought that I'm having. So I'll take, for example, this person thinks I'm unattractive. I'll take that as an automatic thought. The second step is what triggered that event. So basically describing like what made you have that kind of thought.
Like the situation.
Yeah, the situation, exactly.
Okay.
So the way that if I had to write that down, it's like, I was wearing this outfit and this person looked like they gave like a weird look to me. So because I've noticed that weird look that I think is a weird look, I move on to how emotionally intense that emotion was. So I felt embarrassed. I felt really sad. And those if I did percentage wise, like 90% intensity.
Right.
The next step to that, again, this is what I've gone through automatic thought record. This is my been through therapy. Jen maybe have something different. But after that emotion, it goes into like, okay, like, well, what things support that automatic thought? Like, what are the things that support that you are unattractive? And these have to be facts. They cannot be pure emotions. It has to be like you're presenting to a judge of like, okay, what are facts that you are unattractive, right?
You're in court right now.
Yeah, you literally
with
are
yourself.
in court. Yes, with yourself, literally. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, okay, what is the thing that makes me think I'm unattractive, right? What's the facts to it? And when I think about it now, it's like everything that I will say, like I'll be like, oh, like, well, I have a big ass forehead or whatever. Like it's
wait,
like
I just looked at your forehead and I was like, wait, I've never like been like, oh, he has a big forehead.
5 head.
That's so funny.
But like that's not a fact. That's like more of like a subjective opinion, right? So it's like, okay, I have nothing to really support that automatic thought. So what's gonna go against that automatic thought? I've had people tell me that I am an attractive person. I've been called cute before, right? And then the other one is so another question to that is, what's the worst case scenario of you thinking that you're unattractive? Worst case scenario, like have low self-worth, right? Obviously, that's
yes.
I feel like I really chose a bad example. I really want to go with a different example, but like
no. I think it's working though.
Okay.
Everything's making sense in my head right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Best case scenario is best case scenario is like, oh, that person doesn't actually think that. It's because my perception of what they were doing or what they were like, possibly doing in that time is not actually what they're thinking. And then I'll have to pick what's the most realistic scenario. Is it the worst case scenario or the best case scenario? 9 times out of 10, the best case scenario is the most realistic one, because your worst case scenario is just like your fear and like taking things to an extreme. I think something I missed before that was what were like alternative things that could have happened with how you made you feel. So the alternative thing would be like, oh, well, that person had an itch in their eye. So like when it's like, oh, like their look wasn't really a side look to you. Second one was like, maybe that person just doesn't like that outfit on you, but they overall think you are an attractive person, Yeah.
And you can come up with a million of those
literally a million things. So so that was backtracking. Now going after the question, after the realistic scenario, it's what would a friend say to you? And this one gets me every single time, because as you know, like we are our own harshest critics. So the advice that we give out, like we don't do that to ourselves, right?
True. Yes, I agree.
So in that circumstance, if my friend came up to me and was like, hey, like, yo, I feel super unattractive and like I don't like how I look. I'm like, okay, but for me, like if a friend came to me, obviously the thing that I would do is like, why would you think about that about yourself? Like
That's assuming you have good friends.
Yes,
which you do.
Yes.
Yes, I know.
We are
Yes.
thinking that our self is our friends,
Yes.
right?
Some people's friends, I'm like,
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. But I know your friends are good. Yeah, they're great.
But I would say to that person that they said that to me is like, oh, like, hey, like, you know, what made you think of this way? Like maybe that person doesn't really think that, like they had, you know, they got an itch in their eye, or like, you know, like,
yeah,
you know, talk me through why you feel like you're unattractive, and like, you know, I just want to let you know, like, you know, you are a beautiful person. You are, whether that's inside or out. If it's on the out, like, if you don't think you're a beautiful person on the outside, doesn't matter. Like, that's the inside that really counts.
Yeah.
And you know, people have told you you are cute and attractive before, so it's not like you are like factually like that. Like that is such a subjective thing, and you know, and also like why does that person's opinion matter? Like why does that one person out of everyone else matter to like to you about how you feel about yourself on a physical standpoint? So that would be like what I would say if I was a friend. And then after that, I would assess like, okay, do I still feel my intensity of feelings of sadness and embarrassment are at 90%? After that, most likely I'll be like, okay, it's at 10% now. And the final question is like, do you believe that automatic thought? By the end of it, I don't. So that's kind of like probably the quickest rundown of automatic thought record. But I guess how have you experienced cognitive or dealing with your automatic thoughts in that way? Maybe not in that way, but like.
So what I do is very similar.
Okay.
Well, so there's like my journaling, and then I see that as more structured journaling. So sometimes, most of the time, if I'm not feeling like terrible, I'll just write stuff down and like, you know, kind of like free flow, go through it, and by the end I'll feel better. Which, by the way, I always feel like I have to tell people this, that like journaling should never be like feel like a chore. And I think people always think like I need to journal a certain way because of like the movies or whatever, but like literally when you journal, just write whatever you want. Like just write anything. And that in itself helps you a lot. But so going back to that, I actually have a video for specifically for the depression one. And that's for the most part what I do, but sometimes in different order. And then my exercise is based off of the book that I mentioned in the video. And it helps me tremendously. I haven't used it in a while just because I feel like
you're at a different point in your life now.
Yeah,
I totally
exactly.
Understand. Yeah.
But it just like I feel like it unlocks something in me and makes me feel like lighter. And so I was gonna ask, like, how has that been working for you? Like, do you feel differently when you finish it? Like, you know, a week later, how does that?
Yeah, no, I like also like yourself, like I don't do it as much now because I have a better like understanding of myself. But like when I was doing it, I felt so much lighter afterwards because it was so intense about that feeling of like self-hatred on yourself. But like when you start to talk, because the whole point of that is to take yourself out of this emotional cycle, because when we are emotional, the feelings are just super intense, right? And because they're super intense, those negative thoughts about yourself start to brand itself into your mind a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So because you're talking yourself through it, you're taking yourself out of looking at more logical sense, right? Like talking about putting yourself like literally in court against yourself,
right?
And when you do that, because everything's based on facts, like you can't say anything that's subjective, right? You have to look at things from an objective standpoint, and because of that, it's like, oh, like this actually is just me thinking poorly of myself, and that, you know, this is not something that's a true fact about myself. When I was going through depression and using this, like the biggest automatic thought that I did have about myself was that like you're not a good person, and like I literally had to write that over and over again, like that thought, like taking that thought through my automatic thought record. I had to do it over and over again until like one day I finally felt lighter about myself. You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes like I think it's a great tool, and like I will stick by it like 110%. It's just sometimes like there's those days where like even when you get yourself through it, like the intensity of those emotions are still high enough where like you're not like
it takes over.
And like that's gonna happen, and sometimes it's not gonna effectively work, but that's why you're supposed to have a tool belt when things don't work. There's other things that you can go to. So to answer your question, I felt super light afterwards, and I felt so much better about myself, and I feel like that's where my self-worth started to pick up, because it's like, hey, these automatic thoughts that you're having about yourself are not necessarily true. It's like more of like it's just more of how your perspective and your narrative about yourself, and that's the thing that was killing me. It's like the narrative I had of myself was so bad. I mean, so bad that I didn't think anything else was possible in terms of like.
Well, because you're also feeling it too.
Exactly.
Right. Like it's like you think it and then you feel it and then it becomes reality, which, obviously when you break it down, it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. How about yourself? Like, how did you feel like afterwards? Like doing the exercise?
I haven't felt depressed in a year and a half, so it's worked. But I actually wanted to, because you brought up multiple times, like, your biggest example is that you are a monster or something like that, right? Is that what I'm is okay? And then also that you're not a good person. Do you still believe that's true?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where does that come from?
That came from, I won't go specific about the details of the event, but the event that kind of led to me feeling like, I'm gonna emphasis on feel, because other people's perception was not the same after talking with them. But a certain event happened where I felt like my friends were like turning like against me, and that like, they don't think that I am a good person anymore, and that like the thing that I did like wasn't a good, just like not good person thing, right? So because of that, and coming into college, like I literally was voted nicest guy. So like I had identity already, right?
Yeah.
Where I can't upset anyone, and the fact that at the event that I did, because of a mistake I made, for other people to make me feel like I was annoying and I was a burden, and that like, like what I did was like unacceptable and not something that most like that other people can't do, like other people shouldn't do. Like those automatic thoughts came from that, because I felt alone, because I felt like, hey, no, Randy, like you are a amazing person. Like people have been telling you that all your life before college.
Yeah.
I was the golden child. I was like, class president. So a lot of things was like positive about the image of myself. Right. But for me to make a mistake, and then this thing for all my friends to like kind of make, for all my friends to, from my perspective, I felt like all my friends were like, oh, like, you're a bad person. That hurt so much, because I was like, why am I being painted in this way when I kind of know like when I know the person that I am, and that the thing that I did was just like a mistake, you know what I mean?
Right, like you being human.
yes exactly. But I didn't allow myself to be human, right? Because I was being a perfectionist also.
I see.
That I couldn't do something that will hurt anybody's feelings. And and especially I hurt the feelings of people that I cared about a lot. So yeah, that's where that you are a bad person, you are like a monster thoughts came from. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was really thinking, I'm like, somebody in your life has definitely ingrained that in your head,
Yeah. No, it was definitely just from that specific event, and working through, like, I definitely have done a lot to like fix that narrative of myself.
I see.
Yeah, because my friends now like don't think that anymore. Like they didn't even think about it at that time either.
Right. It was more like your own perspective.
Yes, my internal perspective of like, oh shit, like everyone's against me, like all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's just like how we take our own narrative and perspective within ourselves. But yeah, that's where that came from.
That makes sense.
What was the biggest automatic thought that was, I guess, driving you, or one that you had to really work through?
Ooh. I can't say there's any that really like stand out. But I think the overarching theme, which I think I'm still really trying to, I think I've come to terms with it a lot more recently, is I always end up with the I'm not good enough. And I think I have days where I still feel like I'm not good enough. But because of what's been happening, like what's been going on the past couple of months, good things happening in my life.
Yeah.
I've felt more worthy of things. And so the I'm not good enough was from I didn't like myself, which is very different from I don't love myself. Because I love myself a lot the past couple of years, and this is like very like, I don't know, metaphorical, like cryptic or whatever, but it is very different for me because I did things that meant that I love myself, but I don't know. I think the automatic thoughts were really making me not like myself and feel unworthy of good things and unworthy of just anything like in life.
Yeah.
And maybe because of, like understanding my automatic thoughts, it's been healing that part of me where I don't feel good enough for things sometimes it's like, okay, this gets so bad to the point where I'm like, I don't even feel good enough to just like exist, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that way anymore and stuff, but it would just be so painful because I'd be like, why am I not good enough? And then I think healing myself and like my trauma has helped me with that, but also like, understanding that the automatic thought is I'm not good enough. And then when you present that case to yourself, it usually end up on like a more positive end of that argument, which is I am good enough and I'm right where I should be.
Right.
So yeah, I think that is one of the biggest ones. And it's something that I've like, I don't know, it was harder to find an answer to.
Yeah. I mean, because it's like there's so many layers to being good enough, right?
Right. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, well, where do you feel like you're not good enough? Is it your work, your career? Is it physically? Is it mentally? Yeah, literally everything, right? And like because the concept of being good enough wasn't really a phrase or wordplay that I like really thought about until I was depressed. Because I never thought that also like I was oblivious to it. So because like in the beginning of college, like I would try to kind of do that whole dating thing and like like whatever, like hooking up with people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And every time I got rejected, I was like, oh, like
it's a direct attack, right? To your self-worth.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's where like like I'm not good enough for X, Y, and Z, and like that's what made it hurt a little bit harder. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of rejection, have you ever heard of rejection sensitivity?
I have not, but I'm pretty sure my rejection sensitivity was pretty high.
Oh, like even now? Or
okay, maybe
just
not.
back then?
Back then, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Which is very normal.
Yeah. I mean, if I could tell you right now, like in high school, like I wouldn't ask out the other girl if I didn't know that they didn't like me, or
if you knew that they liked you for sure, like 100%.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I wouldn't do it unless someone told me for sure. So that's why like I had like this 2-year crush on one of my exes, and then like I didn't tell them until senior year because I was so afraid of being rejected. Yeah, so my rejection sensitivity was definitely high.
Okay.
Because I always wanted to I was just like I was just like good in sports, good at school, so it's like that's something that like you would be bad at, then it's like, oh, my whole world is shattered now.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's so weird because it's always the people that are like so like outwardly excel so well in like everything that are the most sensitive to rejection.
Yeah.
Because it really shatters like, and even myself included, like I think it really shatters like my image, the one that I carefully crafted, right? Like the one where I'm like, oh, I'm smart and she's outgoing and she's happy all the time and stuff. And then if I get rejected, I'm like, oh my gosh, are all these things like fake?
Yeah.
Like they're not true.
Yeah. It f- your identity for sure.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it's also, like you said, it threatens your identity, right? Because for all those people that like, I think that's where my fear of failure came from. So it's like, oh, if I'm already inherently good at these things, then like the first instance where you fail or do something wrong or mistake, that you're like, whoa, like I'm not used to this. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I just wanted to share something. I will say though, I think my fear of failure comes from excessive criticism from my parents.
I can see that.
Yeah, like obviously everyone's different, but I think I was never allowed to fail in my family. And when I did, it was like, well, if you did this, then you wouldn't have ended up in this situation, which is not helpful for someone who's a kid and like has fallen down.
Yeah.
And you need like more support to try again. And I think that's why, like, even now, I'm gonna get deep into this, right? Like with social media, I've journaled a lot about it, like with the automatic thoughts and stuff like that. And what comes up over and over again is like just this, like, you're not worthy, like, and I can't, sometimes it's so hard for me to like sit with that failure of like, you know, my video isn't going to blow up overnight.
No, it's not.
Yeah. No. And so I think that brings up a huge part of me that's like so deeply ingrained in me of like, I'm scared someone's going to come in and like judge and criticize all these videos and say that there's something wrong with it. And then I get like in analysis paralysis and I just like don't do anything for like a month. Yeah.
No, I mean, I totally resonate with you. Like this journey of being a content creators, I feel like are in a, if we're talking about mental health wise, like at such a sensitive point, because anything could happen and then your mental health could break. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were talking about, you know, am I worthy? About saying like, you know, saying all this stuff. Yeah, I feel that too. Right? I'm literally talking about myself and having people talk about themselves. So I was like, who actually gives a fuck? But then it's just like,
exactly.
It's like, wait a minute. Like, why are you doing it in the first place? Right. I'm doing it because you have a story and I have a story that maybe someone out there can resonate with and be like, oh my God, like there is hope, right? There isn't something where like, I'm not like, it's not a dead end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And like, you know, that's why I do it.
Yeah. And also that it doesn't have to be this way forever. Like, because for a lot of people, I mean, some people are older than us, right? And they're probably like, oh my gosh, I've been like this my entire life and I can't change. And I'm like, I do this because I want people to know, like, you can change. And it's just like, you just don't have enough information.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, it's always like, there's an answer out there. You just have to go and find it.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, it's just like, yeah, like I've had those automatic thoughts too about not feeling worthy, who's gonna care about what I say. But if you understand your why and why you're doing it and you're just putting it out there is one person or someone that like is impacted, but you know, not everyone's gonna blow up your comment feed being like, hey, like I really like this. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
How it's being generated now is like a like.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But now we even look at likes like, oh, like
it's like, oh, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
even if
it's
like 20. And I'm like, that's 20 people who've seen the video.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And like I struggle with that too, of like, oh, like why is my like count not up? Why is my view count not up? But like you really just gotta bring yourself back and understand why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And be proud or intentional about the content that you're putting out.
Right. Yeah.
And as long as it supports that mission of your why, then I think you're doing a good job. And you can't be, things are not gonna blow up overnight. Like we know this, like this market is overly saturated, and like we would love if more people just listen to what we are saying and take that in. But like at the end of the day, like we said, nothing happens overnight. This could be a 1 to 2 year, 3 year, whatever.
Right.
It could be,
exactly.
You genuinely just never know.
Yeah.
And I brought it up before where I was like, oh, like, you know, because I was struggling with that, I was like, do I need to tell myself something to get through it? And the thing that I was telling myself was like, hey man, like no one gives a about you. And that's okay. And it's just like, oh, like, you know, when I brought that up to my friends, they were like, I was like, am I being too harsh on myself?
Right, because it's like everything that you're trying to work against. But then I think that's what's giving you motivation to post though, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's motivation to post. I think it's more of like, hey, like it's okay that this doesn't get a million views, right?
Yeah.
it's okay that you didn't get like 100 comments on this. It's more about like, hey, like just put your shit out there.
Yes,
And like,
that's true.
And like genuinely, like people are gonna see it, view it, and however they want to take that, that's okay. Like just put your shit out there, you know. And someone's gonna be impacted by it whether you see it or not. If someone's watching it, you know. But like, well, also
I've gotten people like, and I don't even have all the subscribers. Like I have like 50 or something. But the thing is, I still remember this, like that time I came out with my depression video, like the first time where it was just like me still being depressed. And I was like, I just have to like put it out there and be honest with people. I had so many people in my DMs, like, you know, just friends that I know who are like, wow, like I've been feeling this for a long time. And that in itself, I'm like, this is so meaningful. Like I don't need 100 people telling me that they can relate. And just like the DMs alone were like enough for me to like, I was like emotional when I saw those messages.
Yeah. And honestly, those DMs that you got physically that you saw, there's probably a lot more that happened internally in the head that, you know,
and they were even brave enough to even come to me, you know, because like it's hard to just tell anybody.
Having the mental health of a content creator is so tough. And it's just like, you have to understand your why and why you're doing it and keep to it, because at the end of the day, like, yes, you want those numbers to go up, but life isn't all about numbers. So
exactly. It's about those connections.
Exactly.
Human connections.
Exactly.
Right?
So obviously there was a lot to unpack, and you've given great, you know, tips and tricks for those who may have gone through like similar experiences. I don't want to leave this story without you having any kind of message or another tip or trick that can help someone along their journey.
Ooh. I will say that it's making the right decision for yourself is never going to be easy. And this is a huge thing that I learned. Like last month when I moved back from California, I'm in my uncle's house now, so I don't pay rent. And he's kind of become like my new father figure who, like, you know, I was close with him as a kid, but because of my dad, like we always had like a gap in our relationship because he would like create this image in my mind. And for the first time I felt like, you know, when I told you back in 2021, I made that decision to never go back to my parents' house again. Last month was the first time I finally felt like it was like it has solidified, like it was worth it, and that I'm not dealing with the consequences of making that decision. So sometimes making that hard decision that's like best for me is going to take years to kick in before you realize like, oh, like this was the best decision for me. And so I just want to say, like, for those who are like losing hope, you know, in what you're doing and like healing and choosing to take the tough route, which honestly I think the healing route is the harder route.
For sure.
There is a good on the other end. Like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So
beautifully said. I do want to say, like, just on the healing emotional work, obviously you've done a lot, we've both done a lot. It's a hard journey, and those memories and instances of trauma, depression, anxiety, it's never gonna go away. Like, I know that's kind of a hard thing to hear, but it's never gonna go away. But now you have the tools to really cope with them and have a better relationship with those things in order for you to move on in life. And I know it's something that you probably won't want to forget, but that's not the reality of it, how our brain works. I bet if we all had a switch or could choose memories that we would let go or like erase, it would have been done by now.
But that's also how like DID, like dissociative identity, sort of
there you
happens,
go.
right?
Okay,
like that's
enough.
the switch. No, I'm not gonna go into that. It's because I watched Hui and I watched like a show recently, and it was about DID, and he has so much trauma, which is why, and I was like, his second and third personality came out.
Well, there you go. You know, just give yourself grace. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And just find your, I think like Jen said, find your community, don't make those decisions for yourself, even though they may seem like the harder path. don't stay in things that are at the end of the day toxic for you and not giving you the life that you so want to deserve. So I want to put that out there. Well, Jen, I just want to say, wow, first of all. Obviously, it's been a crazy conversation in terms of like what you've been through, how you've been able to heal. And I'm so glad that like you've done so much healing and work, because honestly, I was anticipating you for to like cry like while you were telling about the story. But I think because you've done so much emotional healing that, you know, not to say it doesn't affect you still, but like you have such a better relationship with it. And like I feel like when we were in college, like we would talk deep, we would talk about like, you know, what's going on in life and stresses. And honestly, I think I knew of these struggles, but not to the extent that you've described to me today. So I just want to say I'm glad you are here, you never gave up. And that you know, thank you for telling your story to my audience. And I hope they were able to grab something that, you know, there is hope always, and to not give up. So thank you again for coming on in your time.
Of course. And thanks for listening too. Yeah.
Of course.
We went deep today.
Yes,
so,
yes we did. Yes we did. All right. So we're going to get into song association. If you're not familiar with the game, basically I give you a word, you give me a song title, song lyric. Lately, my guests have been giving a song that has the meaning of that word. So for example, if I said time, someone gave me Intentions by Justin Bieber, because you have to be intentional with your time. That's just an example of like how you can use the intention part of it.
Wait, so you would give a theme and then I would give the song title and then like the lyric?
Yeah, I just give you a word. Yeah, I just give you a word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be hard.
Here, let me go first so that I can give you an example of what. Okay. So you give me a word and I'll give you a song. I'll give you a song title or song lyric with that word in it.
Peace.
I think like a song that encompasses peace. It's just like, I mean, it's like when all those stars were, or artists would create that song. It's like Michael Jackson. Like, I don't know, there's something about like, We Are the World. Do you remember that song?
Oh, wait. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that song, but it reminded me of something else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What did it remind you of?
So I think Peace would be Imagine
by
John Lennon.
I'm not too familiar.
All the people.
Oh yeah,
you gotta listen to it.
Yeah. Yes, I do know that. I do know the song. I just never knew what the song title was.
Yeah. I think you should listen to it because it's like world peace.
World peace. Okay. Gotcha.
Or that's what I think of. Okay. It's like so relaxing.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a hard one. Good one.
Yeah. Thank you.
The word I'm gonna give you is I'm gonna say. No, just cause wrong. I'm gonna give you love.
Oh, love. the one that came to mind was Only Love Can Hurt Like This. But then I'm like, no, that's not what I stand for.
Like, this is not the message you're going trying to go for. Okay.
Love. Kelly Clarkson has a song that's called If No One Will Listen. And it's so old school, like I swear like nobody knows what the song is.
Okay.
But it basically just she's singing about like, well, if no one's there for you, I will be. And I think that's
awesome.
Yeah, that reminds me of like real love.
Yeah.
Okay, someone's here for me.
Damn. Very nice.
Hey, I will have deep talks with you all day, you know, like because I'm like I love it, and I'll ask hard questions.
No, literally, because it's like literally like it's our story. And like how you get to understand the person and how they think. So
right, exactly.
Yeah. Damn, I guess I have to listen to that Kelly Clarkson song then.
Yeah. Oh, she's been through a lot, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know like all her backstory, but yeah, her music is good.
Oh, always, ever since you've been gone.
Wait, but do you know the song Because of You? That's her like.
I feel
so
like
famous,
I definitely
right?
know that song, but it's not ringing in my head right now.
I used to think it used to play on Magic 106.7, you know, like playing the radio and all that stuff. And well, you can listen to it after, but I always thought it was a love song until a couple years ago. And then I was like, oh shit, it's about her dad. And I was like, whoa, this is about my dad too. Like, you know, like I was like, oh, I can relate in that sense. I can relate to it more now that it's like about her dad and not just a love song.
Yeah. It's crazy. You think, well, music can always be interpreted in many different ways.
Yes, definitely.
All right, Jen. So let's get into the final big three questions. These are questions that I think can leave the final mark on, you know, just your story, the message that you want to send to the people. So my first question to you is, if you could sit down with a younger version of Jen, what would you say to her? Could be advice, anything could just be sitting with them, what would that be?
So it would be either like my 7-year-old self or me when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
So I can I go into detail about?
Of course.
I would say 7-year-old because I think that was the time period in which I was like in the basement a lot, and so I would hug her and I do this exercise all the time, because that's the part that's the version of me that's felt the loneliest. So I wouldn't say anything to that version of her because all she needed was a hug. And then to my 16-year-old self, there was a lot of turmoil. I remember I ran out of my house on Christmas, and I think I like went and found one of my friends, Nayun, and we sat like on a little tree trunk in a park in our town. And I think that was one of the times where I just felt like I felt so trapped, like I couldn't get out of this thing. And I would go back to her and tell her like, you made it out and you just have to keep going. But she knows that now, you know? Yeah. But I think 16-year-old me, I would talk to because she was going through a lot. Yeah.
Talking to your younger self is such a good exercise. But it definitely, I would say, allow you to revisit some negative times in your life. Because you want to care for, like, I know how you feel, but, you're going to be okay at the end of it.
Yeah. And she's probably like, no, like, what are you talking about? This is hell.
Yeah. Yeah, your younger version is always the most stubborn one, too.
Yeah, that's true. I was like, damn, I was so naive in certain ways.
My second question for you is, what does becoming the highest version of yourself mean to you? And how are you doing that today?
Ooh, that's a good question. Being the highest version of me means that I'm doing what I love and I'm being a person that is kind and making a difference, and also I'm doing it in a way in which like I like myself and I like who I'm being instead of like, cheating my way to whatever it is, or having to like throw people under the bus to in order to get where I am. So for me, that's the highest version, like making a difference, liking who I am. And I forgot the last one already. I started off with it, liking who I am and liking what I do. That's the highest version of myself. And I think I'm like, I'm there. Yeah. Like I'm on the right track. And what was the second question?
It was how are you doing that today? And I think you kind of answered that.
Yeah. Wow, I like just like accidentally answered. Yeah, I'm doing that today because, well, I heal. I make sure I'm always learning. I also want to make sure that I'm like still being humble at the same time. Yeah. And just like always having the compass, like, okay, what is my purpose? Like, why am I doing this? And having that why is so important. Yeah. Like, I just enjoy what I do.
For sure. Yeah, it's what's supposed to drive us, not the motivation that cannot be relied on.
Yes, exactly.
My last question to you is, if you could connect me to someone that you think would be great to be on this podcast, who would it be and why? I know you've mentioned your boyfriend. I don't know if you wanted to throw anyone else there, but if your boyfriend is, then that's cool.
If it's feasible or just like anybody?
Feasible. So like you would be able to be my point person.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can do, like, obviously my boyfriend is one of them. Emmeline would be great on this podcast, and I don't know if my sister would ever do it, but she would be great. Like, I think she'd be, I tell her this sometimes, we're not good with words of affirmation, but and Lolly, if you better watch till the end of the episode or else you're not going to hear this. I'm so proud of her. Like, she is one of the most like mature 18-year-olds I've ever met. And she's more mature than like half the population. Like, all right, not half the population, but like a lot of like 40-year-olds are out there. And I think like if you were to meet her, you would never think that she's 18. And she has learned a lot and has a lot to say But she's also a super like big introvert, so she doesn't always like to be like
on camera.
On camera, like talking about things and stuff. Yeah, so Lolly would be one of them.
Okay. Well, we're gonna make any of those happen.
Yes.
Again, Jen, thank you so much. Do you want to plug any of your socials for people to follow you?
Oh yes, my Instagram is jentan0428. YouTube channel link is on there, and then my TikTok is jentan with 2 N's at the end, so JENTANNN.
I'll make sure to put that in the description below so you guys can have an easy click there. All right, Jen, again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your journey. I mean, this might need a part 2 at the end of the day, so we'll see how this goes.
Hey, if you need someone to fill a slot, just invite me.
It's not even fill a slot. It's like literally just talking about our journeys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, obviously.
I feel like again, we could talk for hours, but I feel like there's, we had to try to fit so much in this.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I would love to come for a part 2.
That's what I love to hear.
Let's go.
All right, guys. If you liked any part of this episode, please make sure to clip it, tag me and Jen in it. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe. And as always, let's fall in love with the process of getting better every day and becoming the highest version of ourselves. Love y'all.